Hey, everybody, welcome to another great and fun and wonderful, exciting edition of the People of Packaging podcast. My guest today is Adam Page. Adam is the VP of Reports at Smithers, and we're going to talk about trends and market analysis in the packaging industry. You don't want to miss this. And speaking of not missing something, I want to give a quick recommendation that if you care about the future of packaging, and I know that you do, I know that Adam Page does, you'll want to check out the Sustainable Packaging Podcast with Corey Connors, presented by Atlantic Packaging. Corey talks with industry leaders about what's actually working in sustainable packaging, from better materials to smarter designs, and gives actionable insights you can use. It's informative, practical, and honestly, it's pretty fun. Listen and subscribe to the Sustainable Packaging Podcast wherever you listen. New episodes drop weekly. I think it's like every Sunday at midnight or something. He is a machine. He's way better at this than I am. So go check out the Sustainable Packaging Podcast with Corey Connors, brought to you by Atlantic Packaging. Okay, so with that being said, without further ado, let's get to this interview here with Adam Page from Smithers.
We found from 20 plus years of doing this research is to get the best answers, the clearest answers. You need a variety of perspectives, including deep technical knowledge and understanding. You need relationships with key players in the market who will tell you things that are simply not available from published sources. And you need a method or an approach to reconcile and verify contradictory sources and information that are out there, which by themselves are fine, they're accurate, but they're the pieces of the puzzle.
Adam, how are you today?
Yeah, very good. How are you, Adam?
You know, I don't think there's a gentleman named Adam Peck that's in the packaging industry that has not been on my podcast yet, but your name would be the closest to my name that I've had on the show. So that's exciting. I'm pretty and you have a wonderful haircut. So if you're not watching the episode, Adam, you are in, where are you based out of?
Yeah, so our office is about an hour south of London. I'm based in the UK. Our headquarters are in Akron, Ohio, and we have a small office in Suzhou in China as well.
Okay, great. So South London, Akron, Ohio, and China. What's the connection with Akron, Ohio? Is that just where?
Yeah, so when I joined 25 years ago, I joined PIRA, the Printing Industry Research Association. So our legacy and background is in print and connected to packaging and paper and all these other industries. And then we were acquired by Smithers in 2010 and became part of the Smithers group of companies. And as part of that, took on a wider remit, looking after a wider range of industry sectors, taking on many new kind of markets. But packaging has always been our focus as well.
That's amazing. So for all of the American listeners, I think we are dying to know who's your what house of Harry Potter are you in? We just assume everybody loves Harry Potter in the UK, but we're probably wrong.
No, I've been to the Harry Potter world, and been to the theme parks as well. So I'm going to go classic and say Hogwarts.
Gryffindor.
Gryffindor, yes.
Okay, yeah. That's I found out I am Hufflepuff. So that's pretty fun. And I did go. Is it in Watford where the studio tours are?
Yes. It's incredible. Yeah, it's huge. It's where they filmed all the movies, and yeah, it's a great day out.
Yeah. Amazing day. And upon this recording, I'm sad to report that the Premier League team that I follow won the league, but was unable to secure the championship. The Champions League, is that what it is?
Champions League, yes.
Yeah, couldn't bring that back to London. So
yeah, Paris won that one.
Yeah, that was a banner day for Paris, as the San Antonio Spurs, headlined by French's finest basketball player, Victor Wembanyama, also won on the same day. So I guess shout out to France. But that's not what we're here to talk about, Adam. We're going to talk about what you're doing at Smithers and hopefully even get into some current market trends and things that you guys are researching. It seems like every single week there's something new and different that's impacting the packaging industry. So I pretend to be a market researcher, but I just use AI. So I'm terrible. Don't do that, kids. You want to go and find real researchers who are really doing the work, because if you want to know where AI is pulling from, it's all of their research. So I love talking to real people who are actually on the ground doing the work. I guess for my first question is this: how did you get into researching the printing and packaging industry? It's like starting a packaging podcast. It's just
So my background was a journalist. I started in newsletters and magazines, but I really wanted to get into something kind of bigger. And then I discovered, I think like a lot of other people in my industry, this world of B2B publishing and B2B research, which is kind of hidden away and it's a bit obscure, and no one's kind of really talking about this. So I kind of fell into that when I joined Pyra, as I say, about 25 years ago. Started as an editorial researcher, and then I kind of worked my way up. So I still have that editorial background. I still think of myself a bit as an editor, but now I'm lucky enough to have a very big team, as well as a wide network of subject matter experts and consultants and analysts to kind of help me with that research. But yeah, I think most of us in this world, you kind of fall into it and then you fall in love with it because it's difficult, mysterious, and there's always something kind of happening. So when I started, Google was the big thing, and everyone was worried about the impact of the internet, and certainly it did have an impact on kind of technical books. And now, of course, we're in a world of AI, and you're absolutely right. If you can ask AI anything, and it would tell you any answer, but obviously you'd be a fool to entirely trust what the machine and the algorithm is telling you. And that's why you need primary research, you need technical experts, you need good relationships with suppliers, converters, and brands to really find out what's happening. And then you want to put it into some kind of model or some kind of analysis to help you understand what's happening now and where the future's going.
Yeah, we don't have to belabor this point at all, but I think you're absolutely right. I was speaking at a packaging distributor and manufacturer show in Florida, and we were talking about AI and about getting to objective truth. And I said, at this current stage, those AI searches and stuff that you're doing, that is all subjective. The only thing that's true is that is what the AI answer gave to you. That's based on your browsing history, the other questions you've asked. It's not attempting to get to what is verifiably true. It's attempting to get to what answer are you after. And so you can ask it questions, and how you ask it the questions, right, is going to give you subjective answers. And so it's not real research. And I'm saying this from me because I think there might be listeners who are like, well, of course Smithers is going to say, like, you can't, but I'm not paid by you guys. I'm saying this as just a regular human being, is like, this is what the models are built upon, is not that's why they're getting $1 trillion valuations, isn't because they're reporting absolute objective truth. What they're doing is just they're using who you are, and then they're going out to find the information to feed you what it is that you're trying to get to. That's not necessarily true. It's just gonna give you the information. So be very careful with that stuff. That's what I was saying.
AI has pretty much ingested the internet, probably as it was a couple of years ago. So AI is not even kind of totally live and up to date. It's kind of using a cached version of the internet. It scraped content from lots of publishers, and there are lots of debates and lawsuits kind of happening about the whether it can or can't kind of use that content. But what we found from 20 plus years of doing this research is to get the best answers, the clearest answers, you need a variety of perspectives, including deep technical knowledge and understanding. You need relationships with key players in the market who will tell you things that are simply not available from published sources. And you need a method or an approach to reconcile and verify contradictory sources and information that are out there, which by themselves are fine, they're accurate, but they're the pieces of the puzzle. And usually the user wants to answer a very specific question. So the sources that are out there will give a glimpse from one view or one part of the value chain. But to get the specific answer that you need, you usually need to bring multiple sources in. and then you try to add them up and it doesn't come up to the total that you can see from another source over here. So the very best researchers, the very best models have that way of triangulating and sense checking these different contradictory sources. And at the same time, you need something with your principles or your hypothesis for kind of how the world is in order to make sense of this data. But of course, how the world is changing rapidly. I know this is a bit of a cliche, and everyone says how much uncertainty there is, but really there is so much uncertainty. Supply chains are changing, markets are changing, consumer behavior is changing, and that rate of change is accelerating, so that the assumptions you had that applied 3, 4, 5 years ago, they may still apply, but they may not now as well. So a good researcher or a good market analyst has to rethink some of those foundational assumptions. Again, test them through conversations and discussions, and test them by looking at the data. And then you've got to say, okay, what about the future? And obviously, no one's going to totally predict the future. That's impossible. But it is possible to start looking at both the trends and some weaker signals to say, okay, it looks like it's perhaps going in this direction, or it looks like customers are asking for this. What does that mean? And that's probably one of the most enjoyable parts of the role, and enjoyable parts of doing this type of work, I think, is uncovering great questions that don't necessarily have an immediate answer, but kind of unlock this further research and further discussion to get the deeper insight. To ultimately, you've got to make a decision at the end. Otherwise, research is pointless and information is pointless unless you're using it to make some kind of decision. And uncovering those great questions and having those great debates and discussions is essential for that. And if you are a certain type of person, it's also very enjoyable.
Yeah, I love that. So that touches on so many things that I hold very dear to my heart. One thing that I had learned, my background is actually in like Christian pastoral ministry. And, one thing I learned early on was that in kind of ancient civilizations, oftentimes the wisest person was considered the person who could ask the best questions, because asking the best questions in a group where, you think about, you don't have the internet, you don't have a lot of books, like the literacy rate is very low. And so the person who could ask the better questions was then able to go get the better answers. And, I do feel like we are, I will give one positive thing to AI, which is digitized information is readily available to everybody. Like I can help my kids with their calculus homework because of AI, so that is right there. But asking the right questions and being able to, that's becoming, you have like prompt engineers for these things, right? Like we need more curious people. And it's cool to know that you're like, well, we've been doing this for, yourself 25 years. And as you were even talking, I'm thinking like, well, think about yourself. If somebody wanted to research you and all they had to go off of was, what does the internet, what is digitized information about Adam Page, that would be a very small subsection of who you really are. Like what types of food do you enjoy? And, there's so much more to who you are as a human being, that if I wanted to do a research paper on Adam Page, I would need to, like you were talking about, triangulate the information and talk to people who know you and who are around you. And I'm not going to get all of that off of the internet. I'll get a small percentage of it. Even for me, I put a ton of stupid stuff on the internet all the time. And it's less than 5% of who I really am. If somebody wanted to know who I was, you'd have to come spend time with me. And that's why I really genuinely, honestly value what you all are doing at Smithers, because I know that you do the hard work of the, like, what type of beer does Adam Page like? Does he even like beer? Like that equivalent when you do the market research, right? You have to dig in and know the people who are going to give you those pieces of information, and it's verifiable and trustworthy. So
that's it. I think AI is wonderful for problems that have already been solved and already understood. So I can leverage AI. I can go to my fridge and say, okay, I want to make an omelette. You know, what's the best recipe for an omelette with these ingredients that I have with me right now? That's been solved many hundreds of times, and I can pull up a great recipe and try something completely new. But when you're trying something that is unknown, where there are ambiguities, uncertainties, AI falls into the mistake of being too certain about its answer. Obviously, we all know that it hallucinates and it kind of, you know, makes this kind of stuff up. But even sometimes the answers that it gives, it lacks the kind of nuance, and it lacks the scenarios and the options and the probabilities. And obviously it can be trained, and it's getting better and better, and it is an incredibly useful tool. But sometimes those kind of simplistic answers to complex questions, like sometimes the opposite of a big truth is also a big truth as well. It's like these big topics that companies are wrestling with right now can't just be boxed into a simple answer. You need to kind of look at those range of perspectives, particularly if you're thinking about something like the packaging value chain, and you've got, okay, who's making the decision? You've got kind of machinery companies, you've got raw material suppliers, coatings and inks companies, the pack converters themselves, brands, retailers. It's not as simple as saying this person makes the ultimate decision and that's it. There's going to be all of these different stakeholders and voices, all with their different perspectives. And that's how I think decisions are increasingly made. And again, that's makes things more complex to kind of understand. I think there's a presumption that packaging is quite simple because most of the time it works and it delivers what we need and we kind of rely on it, and it gets kind of forgotten. And sometimes it's a bit unloved and it kind of sits in the background and people only talk about it when it kind of goes wrong. And it's not always understood how complex it is, how innovative the packaging industry is. And the packaging industry right now is in this complex world of not just technology and innovation, but different regulatory landscapes in different regions in different countries, different kind of brand owner requirements, contradictory, wanting both convenience and low cost and functionality and kind of barrier. And you've got consumers behaving in completely different ways, where surveys will say that they do want sustainable products and that they want to be good for the environment, which is all fantastic, and that's what they believe. But they kind of want the cheapest solution as well, and they want it immediately. And not just immediately, they want it delivered to their house, sometimes within 24 hours of kind of ordering.
2 hours. I mean, you can.
Yeah.
It's getting, that's rapidly increasing, right? I totally agree with you.
That's it. So if you think about the typical kind of packaging company, what used to be kind of a linear supply chain and it was documented and kind of understood, is now becoming something omni-channel, fragmented, a lot faster. And I used to be able to secure my raw materials from this one company, and I knew how long it would take to ship to me, and I knew what I was going to pay. And we're in an environment now of much higher raw material costs, of inflation, supply chains to a respect kind of breaking down in some instances, and some materials not being available. And those shocks are something I have to absorb, because consumers still want, obviously, to buy food and drink and products, and governments want to see shelves with goods. And when we see empty shelves like we saw during COVID, that causes a big societal alarm. That causes governments to be really concerned, and nobody wants to see that. So all of these complex calculations have to play through for us to get that food that we need at the end of the day to survive.
Yeah. And you know, when you talked about like these big complex answers to big complex questions, that my first thought was actually sustainability in something like food waste, right? It's like you can't, that requires so much data, so much information, so much nuance to it on what changes can the entire value from governmental and regulatory, players and actors to the brands, to the manufacturers, but ultimately it's going to be the consumer that's going to decide. They're either going to vote for the politicians or they're going to vote with their dollars at the brand, right? And so at the end of all of it, it's like we can talk till we're blue in the face about this stuff, but the consumer is a complex beast. And I would imagine trying to get to some sort of point of market research or data on a consumer from a packaging perspective is going to be critical, or a brand perspective when it comes to your packaging, right? Like, because then you're just guessing if you don't have actual like data, not just what they have been doing, but to your point on the rapid rate of change, like what is the most probable expectation of where they're going? And so I guess I'd be curious with Smithers and, kind of your market research in specifically in the packaging industry, who is it for? Is it for the brand owners making decisions about packaging? Is it for the packaging companies making decisions about, machines and equipment and what, is it digital? Is it Gravure? Is it Flexo? Like, is it all of the above? Like, who are you guys creating research for?
Yes. So we serve companies across the value chain, but typically the different company types will have different types of questions. So when we work very closely with brands and retailers, very often they are asking us to help them think through, for example, the impact of specific regulations and legislation, or they ask us to undertake a technology scouting service. So they want to innovate in a particular area, whether it's fresh food or beers, beverages, and they want to know what's out there that they might be able to use. So we would do a lot of research, speak to our contacts to find out what's happening. But we also serve a lot of companies at the beginning of the value chain. Machinery companies, raw material companies, inks, coatings, consumables, and that would be broader and would include print as well. And they want to know what's their customer doing and what's the customer's customer. So what are packaging converters doing in planning? What are label printers and converters doing in planning? And they're driven by the brands. They're partly driven by kind of retailers as well. They're trying to understand the kind of direction of change. And ultimately, they're trying to understand what's the total market size. So, for example, how many tons of polyethylene will be used for pet food pouches in North America, split by type of product, by format, by country, and so on. So we do a lot of what we call market assessment type work to get that data, to get those market splits. We typically do a market forecast as well. But then to undertake that, you need to understand the key drivers and trends, the impact of regulation, changes and developments in technology. And ultimately, there's always a driving decision that needs to be made. Should we invest in this? Yeah. Should we expand our plant? Should we invest in this technology? Should we buy this company? There's always that kind of ultimate decision that's usually driving that kind of research. And then I suppose the final category would be there are market researchers out there, market analysts who have the tools, they have AI, they have their own data, but they tend to be swamped with requests internally from their colleagues, and they need quick answers. So they would come to us because we have a new market intelligence platform. We have a full range of market reports. We publish around 30 market reports every year. Oh, wow. So there'll be companies that subscribe to those reports, and then you get instant access to the data, instant access to the answers, and it helps that individual stakeholder to manage all of those requests that they get internally, to give those answers, to keep the company moving forward and making better decisions faster.
That makes a ton of sense. And my dad used to tell me when I was growing up, and still to this day, some variation of this, but I'll kind of morph it into a little bit of what you're saying, which is, data without actions is pointless, and actions without data is reckless. And so, like getting the research is great, but you're getting the research from Smithers in order to do something. So, I'll give you an example here at Label King. We are installing it's a variable data inkjet print head on our Flexo press. The reason that we're doing that is driven by some regulatory and retail research and demands with the new GS1 Sunrise 2027 barcode UPC to dynamic QR code change that's happening. And so my, just very basic research was like, this is actually happening. 2027 is next year. We're going to see a rapid rate of change, getting rid of eventually getting rid of the one-dimensional UPC code and changing over to a QR code, either serialized or non-serialized. And I want to be a company that is able to do that at the pace and the cost that they're used to doing. And so I took the data and I made a decision based on the data, right? And that's got to be happening every day, all the time at brands and printing companies alike, especially today where there's so much unknown. I think you have to have somebody like Smithers to go to and say, okay, I'm not really sure what's happening, but I know these people over here, this is what they do best. They look at this stuff all day, every day, and I can go to them to help me at least inject a little bit more probable certainty into my decision making. It's like you said, there's no crystal ball. It's not Smithers prophecy. It's Smithers market research, right? So I'm sure you've gotten stuff wrong. I'm sure you get way more stuff right, because if you're getting much stuff wrong, you wouldn't be in business for 25 years. But yeah, I mean, I think that it's, especially today with all the topics we've already covered, right? AI and kind of uncertainty, socio-political, geopolitical uncertainties, with all of that going on, it's like, this is probably the time to lean into human-based deep market research, maybe even more than ever, honestly.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. I think so many companies understand they need data, but they are swamped with data as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's making sense of what they have, understanding where the gaps are, and finding fast, easy, credible way to plug those gaps, ultimately to get something like a verification on a hypothesis, or opening up a new question that perhaps they haven't considered, that may be urgent and they need to answer now, or they may realize they need to answer that as part of their next strategic planning process that's going to be taking place whenever it does. And you're absolutely right on human experts, and that is why we rely on a network of subject matter experts and consultants with backgrounds across every substrate, every print process, key end use markets, kind of spread geographically as well. There's no way we could do our work without those kind of real experts. Because a lot of what we do is primary research, because we've all looked around, Google and AI, and there's useful stuff out there, but there's so many gaps, and you cannot answer the key questions just on desk research alone. And you need those credible experts in order to get the additional information by having meaningful conversations with brands and retailers, pack converters, label printers. And you need those experts to really sense check and verify the findings to come up with something that then is credible and actionable. Or in some cases, you want that person to present to the board, you want them to present to the team, or you want them to facilitate a workshop or a discussion to get everyone's kind of views on board, to make sure you've got that alignment. So when you make the decision, it sticks and you can execute on it as well. That's critical too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about the rest of the world, but here in the U.S., the Bureau of Labor Statistics came out with a report recently that showed an all-time low. It was like 54.1% of like capital is controlled by basically like employees, and that's the lowest it's ever been, because so many there's a point to this. So many companies, we had over 8,000 companies that were publicly traded. So a company that's publicly traded is going to have publicly available information and data. That's now down to less than, it's like 4,000 companies. So the privatization of industry means lack of access to publicly available data. And so those networks that you're relying upon are like, I own a private company. If you want to know anything about Label King, you have to talk to me, you know, or Robert Parker. Like, you have to know, and I have to trust that you're going to do the right thing with that. That's not just going to, I'm just going to throw information out there to be publicly available without knowing what's the reason behind it. And that only happens through these networks of people. So I that just hit me when you were talking about it. I'm like, oh my gosh, public information is actually decreasing with respect to, you know, corporate numbers and
public information is decreasing, partly because of the burden of having to report every quarter. You know, it's a lot of additional work and effort. Also, while there's more available information from, you know, the internet and AI, public sources are getting worse because unfortunately they're not getting the funding and support that you need to undertake big exercises like this. And it's not just in the US, it's kind of Europe as well, and globally. Those departments that collect the statistics and analyze the statistics are actually under pressure and being cut back in some instances. So more and more people have more and more tools that allow the scraping of more and more data, but the sources are being degraded and are not as good as they were 5-10 years ago. So again, just beware when you're using this data, that the quality is, and you can see it in terms of, you know, how frequently it's updated and when it's published after when it was so-called kind of collected. So you can see it yourself when you look at it kind of over time. The only way around this is to plug the gap somehow, and you can guess for yourself. If you are experienced, you can say, well, I think this, and not too much has changed, and that could be absolutely fine. Or you need to find some other way to plug the gaps. As I say, other desk research and interesting sources that are out there and triangulating, or a blend of that with some primary research, I believe is the best way of doing this.
Well, we are already at 30 minutes, and that's crazy, but we spent a ton of time talking about very, very important things. So this is, I hope not the last time that we talk. I'm so fascinated. You said how many reports you come out with? 30 to 40?
We do 30 reports a year, yes. About 15 in packaging, 8 to 10 in print, and we cover a range of other markets, including nonwovens and paper and other raw materials. So
I hope that we can get into some more of these reports. I guess give us a bit of a teaser. First of all, where do people go to get these reports? What's the website?
So go to smithers.com and you'll see information and a link to the market intelligence platform we have. Or by all means, just connect with me directly on LinkedIn, and I will send you kind of more information.
And what would be, if they were to go today, what's the one thing that you're like, we just released, you know, this report about the packaging industry. You know, we could probably spend an hour talking through that.
There's two things that I don't think we've directly spoken about. One is e-commerce. E-commerce is one of the key drivers in the market. It's obviously kind of growing hugely, and it's changing the way obviously packaging is delivered, but also packaging is produced. So big opportunities. Particularly in areas like flexible packaging, because it's kind of lightweight. So there's lots of exciting things happening in flexible packaging. It's also impacting on corrugated. Now that's a kind of the staple kind of substrate for e-commerce. But because of right sizing, AI technology, volumes are actually not as growing as fast. So even though e-commerce is growing, some corrugated markets are going to be under more pressure, as Amazon is kind of shrinking the size of the box to get it more aligned with the actual pack size. So there's lots of things.
Ships in a container, right? Like
exactly. Yeah. So there's a lot of things happening under the surface that are fascinating to see. And e-commerce is one of our kind of top trends that we've been looking at for a while. The other one is PCR, or whether it's food grade PCR, but the use of recycled content in packaging. There is a lot that's happening in terms of regulations driving the usage of this. There's also brand commitments as well about using PCR. But the big challenge is, where's it going to come from?
Mm-hmm.
There's not enough of this material to meet the publicly published aspirations of the major brands. How do you reconcile this? How do you kind of bridge that gap? So there's still big demand for this material. There's a lot of investment that's happening in terms of recycling infrastructure, but perhaps not as fast as some key players will wish. And there's some big deadlines on the horizon, and it looks like some companies will struggle to meet those goals and aspirations just because of that lack of that availability of the material. So big changes happening in that space.
Yeah, and early on in my podcast, I had a gentleman on who runs a company called Plastics for Change, and he was even highlighting the volume of plastics is not there for PCR, and then also the humanitarian ethics around global recycling. That's what he was trying to solve, which was creating a mechanism for fair trade certified PCR, even because there's waste collectors around the world who are oftentimes not even, I mean, they're sleeping in the landfills. It's a horrible human rights violation, and just something that we should be paying attention to that I hadn't even really thought about. And so there's multiple components to the recycling conundrum, which is too long for us to discuss at the end of this. But
and packaging is also not the only industry that is looking for this material. So we're trying to build this kind of circular loop, but there's textiles, and textiles wants this recycled material.
Yeah.
And in the future it's a much smaller amount, but automotive as well. So cars being produced using recycled materials. So you have these big companies, big industries, all looking to get access to kind of the same source, and something has got to give there. So as I say, we give our view on the market and the forecast and the outlook in our new report that's just been published.
All right. Well, everyone go check that out at smithers.com, or you can click on the link in the show notes, or find Adam Page at Smithers. You can reach out to him and ask him questions. Like I said, Adam, if when you guys come out with reports, there are a lot of packaging podcasts, some really great packaging podcasts out there. I think that you should spread the word. But I think that getting that research out is critical, and any way that we can help, I'm always down to help people who are in the packaging industry just get the word out about what it is that they're doing. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing a little bit about Smithers, and I'm excited to see more of what you've been doing, and go on and check it out. So e-commerce and PCR is available right now. I'm sure there will be, sounds like, at least a report, more than one report a month just on packaging. So that's really cool. Any last words?
Yeah, just thank you for having me on. And it's great to discuss these big topics, because there is just so much change happening in packaging right now. And that's certainly why we're publishing a lot of these studies. But there's just a big conversation happening, and it's at every part of the supply chain. And if we can do our bit to raise awareness and to provide some useful data and insight, that's why we're here.
Amazing. Well, Adam Page, thank you so much for coming on. Like I said, everyone go check out smithers.com. Appreciate you. Have a great day.